Hey, Essay. Hey, Holmes. Welcome back to the GroundNpound Podcast, best bets video for UFC Mexico City. Moreno taking on Steve Erceg. And before we get into the video and talk a little bit about the best bets that I like for this week on this card, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's talk a little bit about last week. So last week, we were able to get it done. Chris Taco Padilla went to England and quote-unquote conquered. But we don't really care. At the end of the day, the fight was terrible, but the money's in our wallets from the dog of the week. And he was able to make it 7-3 on the channel, picking all underdogs. Like I said, the fight was an absolute snooze, but Taco Padilla was able to get it done for us at plus 100. So can't really complain too much for a fight card that I felt like we got screwed on a couple of decisions. He was able to get it done and get the nod from the judges. And like DMX always says, where my dogs at? Well, this week, I got a couple of dogs for you. So stick around, obviously, if you want to find out who that dog of the week play is. I always put it right at the end of the video. So stick around and let's get a little bit into the recap of last week. And like I mentioned previously that I think we got screwed on a couple of decisions, man. I felt like Nathan Fletcher, we got screwed on that decision. I felt that he won the fight. You could make a better case that he won 30-27 that you can that Lockren won that fight. I had it 29-28. I gave him rounds 2 and 3, but obviously the judges didn't see it that way, and I felt like we got screwed there. And the same with Mick Parkin, man. I felt like he did enough to win the fight, and unfortunately the judges didn't see it that way. But that's betting, that's MMA sometimes, you can't leave it to the judges all the time. And there was some bright sparks. Obviously, we did hit the underdog player of the week, and unfortunately, we did give back those 2 units that we had from UFC 313, Ankalaev versus Pereira there. But like I said, new goals, new week, new opportunities, and I really do like this UFC Mexico card. I feel very strongly. And before we do get into the video, I just want to say as well that what I do like to do is just go over my unit style, how I like to play these bets, and just explain to people, if they want to tail along at home, this is how I lay my bets out, so that way, if you are interested, just pause the video, take a screenshot, take an image, or take a picture of this, just so that way you can see how the bets are laid out, so you know how much of a unit size to put on each individual bet. But without further ado, let's get into this. Let's get into these bets. Let's get into this fight card that I'm looking forward to. And first up, we have El Loco Manuel Torres, and this guy is crazy. And the thing to me that I like about him in this matchup is I think that he's going to learn from his last mistake in his last fight. So obviously we saw at UFC Noche that he came in taking on a 6'3" Ignacio Bahamundes, and I think Torres just had a difficulty establishing his range in that matchup. Normally he's the taller, bigger guy in the lightweight division, and I think that he just struggled with the size disadvantage. Normally he's the bigger guy, and in this matchup he has youth on his side, he has grappling on his side, he has the Mexican crowd on his side, and although Drew Dober does train at altitude, I don't think it gets out the first round. I think Torres is probably going to come in here and look to steamroll Dober. And we've seen from Dober, good performances, technical striking, but at 36 years old, he's not somebody I can trust at a lighter weight class. And we've seen him get chinned before early in round 1. And I think Torres comes in here and he gets it done. And he's been flip-flopping all week from favorite to underdog. And when I checked before doing the video today, he's sitting at plus 100. So I like him as the underdog. I think that there's value there. And I even like him as a slight favorite. I think he's got more paths to victory. I think he learns from his last performance. And it's getting hard to kind of trust some of the older fighters at 36 years old. And you have to think that Torres is going to learn from his last fight and come in here and take out the old man in Dober. I don't think the Crimson Chin holds up anymore. And like I said, I like Torres this week. I like him in a big way, and I think he gets it done in the co-main event of UFC Mexico City. And next up, we have Julia Pelostri, and I was kind of surprised looking at these odds that she was plus 200. And I think that Lupi Godinez has proven in the past that a lot of her fights are, very, very close. A lot of them can be split decisions, and the judges see it one way that a lot of people see it for Godinez. And obviously, she is the Mexican fighting in Mexico, so there is always the chance that the judges do give her the hometown rub. But I like Palostri in this matchup. I think she's the better striker out of the two. I think Godinez probably has the grappling advantage, but I think Palostri is the bigger, stronger athlete here. I think that she's very aggressive on the feet, Muay Thai style, which I really like. She throws a lot of knees in the clinch. She throws a lot of elbows, big damaging shots, which usually, obviously to the judges, should be the main criteria of how they score fights. And I think that Godinez's path to victory here is to wrestle. And what we have to remember, being this fight card is at altitude, is that's not a path to victory. I think it's going to be able to be sustained over 3 rounds. I think she'll gas out if she tries to wrestle. And I don't like that path to victory for her. So I think that the damaging shots of Palostri are going to take its toll on Lupi Godinez. And I think she probably gets it done by decision here. But we're getting 2-1 on our odds here. And I like her to get it done in what could be a very close fight. So I think the value's there. I think this is more of a value play. Would I be surprised if Godinez pulls it out because she's a Mexican fighting in Mexico? Absolutely not. But women's MMA can be very tricky. And if we're getting 2-1, I like those odds. Hopefully Palostri can pull it off for us this week. And next up, we have the confident play of the week, the slam bet. This is the one I usually put the biggest amount of money on. And first off in the parlay, we have Rafa Garcia. I really like Rafa Garcia this week, guys. I think that he gets it done. And he's fighting the 42-year-old Vincent from Hell Pichel. And the only thing I like about Vincent Pichel in this matchup is honestly that he has a better mustache than I do. And to be perfectly honest with you, I just think he's past it. He seems very slow on the feet. He doesn't look like he throws a whole lot of volume. Rafa Garcia's proven in his last 2 fights that he can put up a ton of volume. He loves to mix in the grappling. He's gritty. He's tough. I just think he gets it done in this matchup. I haven't seen enough from Vincent Pichel that suggests that he's going to be able to take on a bull like Rafa Garcia. And the thing to me that stands out the most, I think, is just the volume. And Rafa's been training at altitude. I like him in this matchup to get it done. And you have to always feel that the Mexicans are obviously going to get the judges on their side if the fight ends up being close in Mexico City. And next up in the parlay, we have Edgar Chairez. And I just think Edgar Chairez is a lock here. I honestly just believe that he's going to come out here and probably flatline CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara in many fights now, he's been hit, he's been dropped, he's been damaged, he's been finished. And Edgar Chairez is a finisher, man. He comes out, he looks for the finish, but he's proven he's got 3-round cardio as well and that he can go the distance. And he's got submissions off of his back, which we've seen Vergara get tapped before. We've seen he comes out and he's able to strike on the feet with guys like Joshua Van and hurt him. So I have no doubt that he's going to be able to take on a guy like CJ Vergara and probably finish him. And also we have Raul Rojas Jr. to finish off the parlay. I've been impressed with this man, youngest man on the roster. I believe he's 20 years old now. I think he comes out. I think he can get the submission on the ground against Morales. I think that his wrestling's always improving. His back control, when he locks in the body triangle, he wins entire rounds with that position. And I think that he's going to be looking to get the finish here and mix in the grappling. And I like him in this matchup. And that gets us minus 104, so almost even money there, or pretty much even money. I like that play this week. I feel very good about it, and hopefully it comes out for us. And next up, I call this one the Fiesta Parlay, and this is the 2 hometown heroes. These are the 2 of the most beloved Mexicans on the card. We have Brandon Moreno. What can be said about Brandon Moreno? He is the epitome of Mexican toughness. He is somebody that all of the fans love, and I like him in this matchup against Steve Erceg. I honestly believe that he's going to be the faster fighter. He's got more experience. I think he wins this fight wherever it goes. And if it is a close decision, obviously I think that the fans are going to be telling the judges who they think won this fight. And he's just one of these guys that I think that the judges are going to undoubtedly be able to get behind just based on how loud the crowd is backing Brandon Moreno. And in terms of fighting style, I think he can win this fight wherever it goes. I think Erceg's too slow on the feet, and Moreno has just proven that he's back and in a good mental headspace in order to take on the flyweight division. And the second leg of the parlay, we have Ronaldo Rodriguez, and again another Mexican who, to be quite honest with you, I think is growing in popularity. I think the crowd again is going to be very behind this young man. He's very experienced with 17-2 professional record, 20 amateur fights before then, and a lot of people are saying that they don't necessarily like his skill set. That on the feet he's not particularly dangerous, but the young man gets finishes on the ground, on the feet, and I like him in this matchup. I don't necessarily think that Bojas has a lot to offer him on the ground. I think that's where he probably gets it done. I think he gets takedowns and maybe finds a submission, but that's the Fiesta Parlay this week, plus 134, and I like the two Mexican boys to get it done. And as always, I do the chalk parlay. I know every week we're always looking at some of these juiced lines and what we can do with them. And here's just an example of something that I like to do. And we've got over 1.5 in the flyweight division, which are in the main event with Erceg and Moreno. And usually both of these gentlemen are going longer in fights. I do think Steve Erceg was surprised by the speed of Kai Kara-France in his last fight. So he did get tagged and dropped and finished in that last fight pretty quickly. But I think that this one goes over 1.5. I think the altitude's going to be a factor in a lot of these fights. I think they're going to go longer because of the lactic acid and the ability to struggle to finish people just because of the altitude. So I think that one goes over 1.5. And next up in the chalk parlay, we have Lupi Godinez and Julia Palostri. And a lot of the women's fights do tend to go longer. Again, I think the altitude plays a factor here. I think we get over 1.5. Both lines very juiced, but it just helps us to get to even money. And we have David Martinez. And David Martinez is fighting an absolute bum. I think he'll smash Oliveira. I think he's much better on the feet. I think the line tells you everything that you need to know about this fight. And he's one, obviously, that I think would be perfect for the chalk parlay. His opponent is 0-2 in the UFC, coming off a 2-year layoff as well. I think Martinez, even though it is his UFC debut, it is worth mentioning that he actually fights out of Mexico City. So he's going to be very used to the altitude, regularly training there, lived his whole life there. So I think that he's definitely one for the chalk parlay. I think he gets it done. And I've also got Joe Pyfer in there. I think Joe Pyfer should win this matchup against Calvin Gastelum. It's really hard to trust Calvin Gastelum in his current form. I don't necessarily think Calvin Gastelum takes fighting that seriously anymore. I think Joe Pyfer is somebody that can get it done on the ground. I think that he's the bigger, stronger guy. If he wants to get it done on the feet, he can have success there as well. My only concern with him is if he comes out too reckless early and he gasses out maybe from heavy grappling, but you have to think that he's going to be prepared for the altitude. And his line is very juiced, which is why we've got him in the chalk parlay, but he rounds that out to plus 108, and I think that he gets it done also. And that brings us to the props, ladies and gentlemen. And I was kind of surprised by this first one. I'm very surprised that Rodriguez and Costa are fight doesn't go to the distance is plus money. I believe that Costa is somebody who is most of the time a kill or be killed fighter, coming off of 2 submission victories. I know that he has a loss in his most recent fight that I believe is by knockout. And Rodriguez, even though he's necessarily small for the division, we've seen him have difficulty with some of these bigger fighters. And I think Costa and him are going to go at it. I think that there's going to be a lot of grappling, and I think that that leaves holes for ground and pound from Rodriguez, which could finish Costa. And I think Costa as well could also find the submission, which definitely isn't out of the realm of the possibilities because he's been on a submission tear recently. So I do think that Costa probably wins by submission if I had to predict it. However, I am going to just take the plus money if fight doesn't go the distance and sit back and enjoy that one. But like I mentioned earlier as well, we've got Julia Palostri at plus 250 for it to go to a decision. And I don't hate the money line here. Obviously, it's plus 200, but I do think the way she's going to get it done is by decision. Just gives you that little bit of extra value there. And like I said earlier, I think that she gets it done. I think she's the harder hitter, and I think the judges are going to have a hard time screwing Lupi Godinez over purely because of screwing Julia Palostri over when you see the amount of damage and the big shots that she does land on the feet. I think that undoubtedly the judge is going to have to give it to her based on damage. But I can understand if you just want to play the money line, that's also fine with me. And I've got Charez inside the distance. I think this one is probably one of my more confident props out of the 3. I just think we've seen Vergara just get murdered on the feet, honestly. The man has just been submitted, beaten up. Even in the fights where he's able to come back and win, he's getting dropped early. And I think that Charez is a much more natural finisher. I think he's going to have success on the feet. I think he's going to have success on the ground. And I think it's just going to be a matter of time before he gets it done and gets CJ out of there. And as I do every week, I like to talk a little bit about honorable mentions and people who I know some of the betting community are looking at, and just giving my take on why I'm not going to make a play on them. And we have Jose Medina, and I wrote toughness, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how is toughness a negative quality? Well, the reason we know he's tough is because that is his only quality, and he gets hit a lot. He doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of skills. His ability to be tough is because he gets beaten up in every fight and doesn't get finished. Now, obviously, I mentioned in the full breakdown video with Carlos that we do every week on a Wednesday that I think if you are going to bet Jose Medina, I think you bet him live after the first round, after he's taken the beating. Like I said, I just don't necessarily see him having success in this matchup unless his opponent gets tired, just based on his body type and being a very jacked individual with the altitude. That's the only way I see him winning this fight, is basically getting beaten up like a punch bag. So not necessarily somebody I like this week. And obviously Steve Erceg, as I mentioned earlier, we're taking Brandon Moreno, and I think that's purely down to the fact that Erceg's too slow for this division. He proved it in his last fight. He got chin-checked by Kai France. I just think he's going to be too slow. I think Moreno's going to get it done. And even though he is big for the weight class and he does have well-rounded skills, he's not necessarily fought the cream of the crop and in the division. And when he has, he's not looked good, and he's not been able to pull off the victories. So not somebody I'm going to be looking at this week. And Gabriel Miranda as well, very hittable. And I think the thing with him is that he always seems to get dropped and put out in fights. And we saw in his performance in his last fight that he's able to get takedowns and find submissions. But I think Emmers is going to be prepared. I think Emmers is much faster on the feet, much slicker, much more athletic. And I don't want to have to necessarily play Emmers by knockout. I think that that's probably how you do play it. I think you play Emmers by knockout, or you play Miranda by submission. But he's not somebody I can really get to this week. He doesn't have the wrestling to get fights to the ground, and he seems to get dropped a lot. So not somebody I'm really interested in this week. And that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to what everybody waits for every single week, the dog of the week. And this week, it is Austin Thud Hubbard. And I know what you guys are thinking. Austin Hubbard, dog of the week, really? Yeah, I don't see anybody this week playing Austin Hubbard, and I don't see why, because I honestly just don't understand how Quinones is the favorite to me. I just looked at these guys' tape. I watched both their fights back in previous last fights, and Austin Thud Hubbard, man, I think he's coming in undervalued here and overlooked, and I just think that there's many ways for him to win this fight. Quinones, when he fought in his last fight, he took on an opponent that was 0-2 in the UFC, who's not particularly good, and I just didn't see it. He looked immature in there, and don't get me wrong, he's young and fighting at a good gym, so he could come in here and be improved after not fighting in a year. But Austin Hubbard was supposed to be on this card, so he trains at altitude as well, so I'm not worried about his cardio. He can mix in grappling, he can mix in striking, and my keys to him for victory realistically are just to be able to come out and wrestle. I think if he comes out early and mixes in the takedowns, he doesn't necessarily have the best wrestling, but it just gives his opponent something to think about. I think that's a good game plan to maybe get the young man who might have an adrenaline dump coming in with his lack of experience tired early. I think pressure is going to be a big factor in this fight. I think Austin Hubbard does a great job of coming forward, always being the aggressor, and I think that the judges will reward that. I think if he comes forward and he's aggressive and pressures, I think that's what's going to sway the judges at the end of rounds, is who's walking forward and who's moving back. And I really like his teep kick that he throws up the middle. I like the fact that he mixes in wrestling. I like the fact that he's always pressuring, and I think that his cardio can be used as a weapon here. And I think the last key to victory is using his experience, finishing rounds strong, going to the calf, using what's working for him in these fights, and being able to push a pace. I think that he knows that he's got a young, inexperienced fighter in front of him. Although he's not had success against the elite of the elite in his last fight when he fought against Alex Hernandez, he looked good in that fight, and he could have necessarily pulled it out if the judges were a little bit kinder to him on the night. I think that was a split decision, and I hate to do MMA math, but I think Alex Hernandez is a big step up in competition in comparison to the gentleman he's fighting this week. I believe it's Quinones. I like Austin Hubbard to get it done. Wasn't that impressed with his opponent, and hopefully he can make it 2 in a row for us for Dog of the Week. And just a little recap of all of the bets in case you guys missed it and, you wanted a little bit of a breakdown as far as all of the bets that we do have on the board, the odds of what they are. You guys can pause the video and take a look there at all of the bets that we do have on the board. And hopefully we can come out on top and make some of those units back from last week's terrible decisions. And as I always say, ladies and gentlemen, hit that like and subscribe button. I think this Mexico City card is going to be crazy. And if you missed it, check out our full card breakdown that I do with Carlos over on the channel. We go through every single pick that we have on the card. We go through every fight, giving our picks, predictions. I talk a little bit about betting insight on there in case there's any matchups that I haven't talked about on this video. And like I always say, hit that like and subscribe button. And this gringo is out. Peace.